You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to episode number 467 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I am Mighty Blue, and we've got another excellent show for you today. We met our main guest, Al Marriott, a couple of times before. He's a fellow Brit and has recently completed his triple crown of hiking by completing the Continental Divide Trail. We interviewed him after his Appalachian Trail hike and his Pacific Crest Trail hike. I thought it might be quite nice to get him back on to complete the set. Funnily enough, I've got another returning guest in a couple of weeks who also completed his triple crown on the CDT last year. It's going to be interesting to see how their stories compare and contrast their experience. We'll hear from Al in a moment. After Al, in Emily Leonard's Happy Hiking, Emily celebrates Father's Day with her husband Bruce, instead of celebrating Hike Naked Day. What a spoil sport. But before we hear from Al, there's this. A couple of years ago, I did something I'd never done in the past. I gave up booze entirely for about 3 months. If you know me well, that was a sacrifice. I had a big goal though. I was trying to reach Mount Whitney with TSX Challenge and was particularly aware that I'd been dehydrated on each of my prior 3 John Muir Trail attempts. So I knew that cutting out my normal couple of glasses of wine each night would help. I also lost weight. I went for a walk each morning for about 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes more. That really kick-started my metabolism and I lost around 15 to 20 pounds. Having that big goal on the horizon, something I really wanted to do, helped to focus my training and preparation. It also didn't hurt that I was preparing for an extreme challenge, though I think I may not have focused on the extreme part in my preparations. If you're in need of that New Year goal, give TSX Challenge a look. They organise backpacking trips in the Sierra, Grand Canyon and beyond for all ages and experience levels. Use the code MIGHTYBLUE to check out for 10% off a 2025 experience. You will never regret it and will have memories for a lifetime. So, we're ready to get on and meet, for the third time on this podcast, Al Marriott, or Lookout. Here's Al. Oh, by the way, you'll notice some tapping throughout our chat. It was Al, not me, and I didn't notice it as we were recording. It's not too bad, though. Here he is. Well, today we've got another returning guest of the show. In fact, Al Marriott has been on the show on 2 previous occasions. First when he completed the AT, then when he followed up with his PCT through hike. Guess what he's done now? Hey Al, thanks for coming back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, you might as well spoil the surprise, but what did you do this year? Last year, in fact, sorry.
I completed my triple crown. I finished the Continental Divide Trail going Nobo in 140 days.
So how long did the other 2 take? 140 for CDT, how long were the other 2?
160 for the PCT. And I think it was like 164 for the AT.
Right. Which was the toughest? Which was the toughest, do you think?
I think the AT was the toughest because
you didn't know what you were doing when you first
started. I was green. Yeah. So I think the AT was the toughest because of we all know about how steep those East Coast mountains are.
They sure are, yeah.
And the rocks, the roots, the mud, the weather. I think that whether I'd done that first or third, I would have probably found that the toughest.
So I was actually I had a calendar year triple crowner who did this, and I said to him, "Do you ever get the chance to celebrate what you've done before you have to go on the next one? Because you complete, say, the AT, and he actually did the AT last, but you complete a hike. You can't, you need to celebrate the hike. Are you able to celebrate because you go every year? You've been every year now, haven't you, for the last 3 years, effectively? Is that right?
3 years on the bounce, yeah.
Yeah, and do you feel that you come down from the hike sufficiently between? Because I know you always intended to do a triple crown, didn't you?
Yeah, I did from the moment I I started planning all of this. I found out about the Appalachian Trail first and wanted to do it. And then somebody said, there's some other hikes. And as I researched them, I thought, wow, these are exciting and different. I want to do them. They're not all the same. So why not have 3 completely different experiences doing something I love, which is hiking?
Yeah. And just catch me up a bit. So in the past, had you done much hiking before you did the AT, or were you completely green?
I'd done a lot of hiking, and I'd done one long distance hike, but nowhere near the length of any of the Triple Crown trails. So, I was completely green for self-supported hikes, because the hikes that I'd done in continental Europe, you have refuges where people cook for you. You don't really have to take your shelters, and if you're going to wild camp, you're not really supposed to, but if you're going to wild camp, usually you do it on a good night, so you can just lay out and cowboy camp, so you're not taking quite as much stuff. And so there was a steep learning curve once I got into the AT.
I'm sure it was, and once again, you learn on the go, don't you? There's no way you can do it unless you do learn on the go. And if that was always the plan, this was literally going to be a 2022, 21, 22 and 23 plan. How do you manage the finances of doing this? And especially as coming from the UK, if there's the flights over here, there's visas, I presume, or how do you manage all those things? And also getting the right sort of gear for that right sort of hike?
So there's a few things you touched on. How do you manage the finances on that? I used to live in Australia. I lived in Australia for a long time, and I had a pretty decent job out there that allowed me to save quite a lot of money. And so with that, I put away and I saved, and I went without a few luxuries for many years. And the plan was to do a lot of travel and to go on a lot of adventures. So, when I decided to put this together, I thought, that's a good way to spend some of the savings. To do it 3 years on the bounce, I found was easier because I carried the momentum from one into the other. There wasn't really a downtime where I had to kind of get used to things after 2 or 3 years off. And with the visas, I had to go to an embassy and go and get a B1, B2 visa, and that allowed me to have up to 6 months at a time in the USA, which was more than enough time to get some.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been for me. It wouldn't have been for me at all. I'm lucky I'm a citizen. I can stay as long as I like.
Maybe that's the next step.
Yeah, well, maybe that is the next step. Yeah,
there are a lot of hikes on the radar, and I think to myself, how can I fit this all in? A couple of summers. So
since you've been over here, these last 3 effectively springs and summers and falls, would you say that this was something you'd like to continue doing in America, or are you now looking around the world for different hikes?
I think things come to you. People suggest stuff or think, so you start to find out about stuff. Or there were other hikes that I was already aware of that I would like to do. You meet different people from all across the world when you do a hike, like any of the hikes that we've both done. And as you meet people, you ask what their experience is, and they tell you about a fantastic time when they hiked in Slovenia, or they hiked the GR20, or they hiked in New Zealand, and you start to put together, oh, well, that one particularly sounds good, and I might avoid that one when people are talking about things like the Florida Trail. You say, no, I'll avoid that.
Yeah, that doesn't appeal to me at least. Even though I live in Florida, the thought of wandering through swamps and with cottonmouths and all sorts of snakes and gators around does not appeal to me one little bit. Although to do it in this weather now, it's lovely outside. It's mid-60s outside right now, so it wouldn't be too bad today. So the trails, obviously, there are obvious differences between the trails, and I've been a bit on the PCT when I've done out west a couple of times. The PCT to the AT is quite different. What does the CDT resemble? Is it more the PCT than the AT?
I think it's definitely more the PCT. I think the CDT and the PCT kind of like siblings, and the AT is a cousin. I think, or at least the way I look at it, is that there are like 5 zones as you're going through it, and you start off, let's say, going from south to north. You go through a desert section on both, then you go up into high alpine above the tree line in the snow if you're early enough for that. Then you get out and then go through lower elevation mountains, and you cross sort of flatter land as you go through Oregon on the PCT, and Idaho and northern Wyoming. And then you go up into sort of alpine forests as you go through Washington and Montana on the CDT. So I found that they were very similar in that respect, but there were still clear differences between them, whereas the AT does have its differences. It's definitely not the same all the way along, but it doesn't mirror those two in that way.
No, it doesn't. And I know that when I remember asking Dixie, Jessica Mills, what her favourite was the AT because it was her first hike. I suspect whichever one's your first hike would normally be your favourite. Is that in this case for you? Would you say if you could only ever do one, if you could only ever have done one of them, which one would it be? It's
a hard question to answer because you're going to offend whoever. But,
no, you're not.
Whatever.
No,
you're not. But my favourite experience was the PCT.
Right.
I think I had the best time. I feel like I got everything I wanted out of that hike, and everything I went in to do sort of came true. It was great. I think I met the right group of people all the way through. I can't think of anybody that I regret meeting. It was a fantastic group of people. It was great weather all the way through. The terrain was challenging, but not, grueling. And I just found that coming off the AT, expecting the worst, but it was a really pleasant way to spend a summer. So I think the PCT for me was the best experience. But I think the reason that I did the Appalachian Trail was. The reason that I did the Appalachian Trail first was that was the one that I heard about first, and that was the one that I think, with no sort of knowledge of those 3 hikes from personally doing them, I think if I hadn't done that, I think there would have always been a what if. But the other 2, I could have probably lived with myself not doing. I think the Appalachian Trail for me was always the one I wondered about because I'd read about it and heard so much about it before doing any of them.
Well, we had you on to talk about the PCT, and I could see I watched a video on your channel this morning, which is very good, by the way. Great. It's really one of the best 5-minute videos I've seen. When people compact it down to 5 minutes, you've got to get a lot of stuff in. Man, you get a lot of stuff in. And I can see you're all having a great time. You met quite a large bunch of people. So did you go out on this trail with a bunch of people, or did you go by yourself? And what did you do for the CDT?
I started all 3 of the trails by going out there alone, not knowing anyone who would be on the trail.
You like that? And just to come back to that a second, do you actually like being by yourself, or do you like the way organically a trail family tends to evolve?
I've had the experience of sort of doing it with a tramley, doing it without a tramley, and everything in between. And I really liked the experience I had on the Pacific Crest Trail, where I would meet a group of people, hike a little faster than them, meet another group of people.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'd take a couple of days off and everyone would catch up, and I kept falling to the back of many groups, and then spend the next 2 weeks hiking my way through them, camping with each group for a night or 2, and then continuing on, and then sort of for that group all those groups would catch me up, and it was a great way to meet lots and lots of people that I knew very well, but never really hike with them for very long. I found that my own pace of hiking during the day left me alone. And then I would get to camp.
Because you're faster than most people?
Faster than most people, yeah.
Right.
And then I would get to camp with people each night, and it would be a different group of people that I'd either catch up to them or they'd catch up to me at, when it was time to camp. And it was really good to be around lots of different people, but not committed to one group. I found that was the best for me. On the CDT, I had a lot of alone time, and I really enjoyed that too. And the AT, I spent the whole thing with the same group of people.
Yes, I know.
The first day to the last, and I loved that as well. But I think I would be more inclined to spend more time alone on trail. I know that there are some people that don't like hiking on their own; they kind of find it lonely. But I kind of like the space to think.
You're quite a quiet, calm guy as well, aren't you? So that's what you tend to come across as. And yet, people can't see, but he had this crazy beard in the PCT film. When we tuned in and just to talk to each other, that we could see each other's faces. He's totally lost his beard. I can't believe it. You look entirely different, about 10 years younger.
Yeah, it's a beard born from laziness, and
nothing wrong with that.
I don't really want to. I don't enjoy shaving every day, and going out there, people don't make judgments about how you look, because we don't keep pocket mirrors on us. So
it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to just not shave and let it go. And I don't really want to dry shave every morning, or like add that to the list of things that I have to do when I get into a town. So from the moment I step on the plane to leave to go to the trail, and until I finish trail, there's no shaving. So over 5 months I grow a huge beard, and and then I shave it off and people don't recognize me. So.
I'm sure. I actually, both my main through hikes, I shaved my head and my beard, so I was completely bald. But I had to do the whole thing again halfway because it kind of grew pretty fast. So the research on the CDT, it seems to be less, not less popular, but less done. I suspect it will be the toughest trail to go first with, because there's less known about it. How did you research it from where you were in England?
I guess I didn't really do a huge amount of research on it, and I didn't do a huge amount of research above what I knew before for any of the trails. I mostly did research on the resupply stops because I follow a vegan lifestyle, and I know that getting vegan food, decent vegan food that you can, support yourself on a hike that isn't just Planters peanuts and Oreos is tough. You can't live out of service station food forever. So where I'd need to do my resupply drops and send packages, and where I wouldn't, and there was some great people who I reached out to in the Facebook groups for the CDT who were more than willing to help me out by sending me all of their research, and it was really great. That's something I love about all of these trails, is there's such a great community that comes together. Anything that's posted on these Facebook pages or Reddit subreddits, people are quick to answer any questions that go up. And I don't think I would have been able to get through these trails as easily had it not been for a great community of people that have come before me and sort of blazed the trail and answered those questions.
Sure. So how did you resupply then? Because I'm told you have to go off trail a long way to get into towns on the CDT. What were the logistics like to get to your resupply?
Most of it is just reaching a road that leads to a big town and then hitchhiking.
And you could hitchhike, could you usually?
Most of the time. There are a couple of places where you have to call a shuttle before you reach the road, and then you have to make sure that you've done that before you reach the road, because the road doesn't have any cell service. So there's a couple of places in Idaho, like a leader and lima that you have to arrange someone to come and get you, and I think they're about $20 or something for a ride that you just couldn't walk in. It would be a full day walk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm more than willing to pay $20 so that I don't have to do that. And you have to make sure you've done that before you hit the road. Otherwise, there's no cell service up there, and you're just a bit stuck. But for most of them, it is just hitchhiking and just biding your time, waiting for someone who is crazy enough to pick up
this lonely, pathetic person on the road. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yes. I found that the CDT, I was kind of expecting it to be this, as I sort of wrote about on a blog post. I said that it's like a monster in a cave, and you can only see its glowing eyes, and you don't really know what you're facing. But then when you get out there, it's just like any other through hike, and there's a community there that give you tips of everyone's talking. And so if you've got any questions when you're actually hiking, what are you planning to do about this resupply, or
sure,
where are you going to send shoes up the trail, or something like that? There are plenty of people around you who have advice.
I've often wondered about that. I can see, obviously, the AT party trails, plenty of people out there, never a problem at all. PCT, I see that there's a similar sort of setup, but less people. But the CDT, I always thought was if the main three trails every year, if say 5,000 people attempt the AT and 4,000 the PCT, say, it's probably about only 1,500 do the CDT. Is that comparison numbers, you reckon?
I don't know. I'm not an authority, but
in relative terms,
it's around 500.
Oh right, only 500.
Well, at least it was the year that I did it last year. Yeah. But I don't know for sure. These you hear these numbers that other hikers talk about as you're going. There's only this many people on trail, and the number I kept hearing was 500. But we don't know that for sure.
So it is less people.
My
point was, though, Al, it is less people, and because it is, you could spend a lot of time by yourself. But I suppose now thinking about it, I'm thinking off the top of my head, as I often do, actually, that if there's an optimal time to go, which I presume there is, and did you start at a similar time as when you started the PCT?
I started about 3 weeks later.
Right. So that's probably the optimal time around there to go. So you're more likely to meet some of those 500 at that time anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, there were 10 people on the day that I started.
Wow.
Who we all started together. But maybe a week before, it was an average of about 3 to 5 people a day that was starting. So I definitely started at the height of the bubble. So I started on the 25th of April after getting some advice from some other Nobo CDT hikers from previous years that said the last week of April was the optimum. And I was actually surprised. I thought going out there that I would see people maybe, every couple of days I would see somebody. And there was a period of 8 days, if you don't count going into town, 8 days straight, that I didn't see any other hikers.
Oh my gosh.
I only saw them when I went into town and resupply. But other than that, and that was northern Idaho or southern Montana, sort of very close to the finish. Other than that, I think I saw another hiker every single day. There were quite a lot of people in the south, and as you start hiking past that bubble and to the front of the crowd, where people are a bit more dispersed, you hit the southbound bubble. So you're passing southbounders, and you see a southbounder once or twice every day until that bubble's gone, and then you catch everybody who's around Glacier. And the last town before Glacier National Park is called East Glacier Park. And there are people who go up, hit the border, and then return back down to that town to make their exit. and there are people who are waiting around for
Sure.
permits to get into the national park, and so that seems to be sort of a bottleneck for people both going north and south, and that's kind of like the big hub before you make your last couple of days through Glacier National Park to the border.
So it's like Monson on the AT, is it? Where everybody sort of meets up before they go down to wilderness. Yeah, quite nice. And did you have to change out? Because we all know that, you know, a through hike really beats up your gear. You've done through hikes in 2 seasons. Did you have to change up much of your gear, or did most of it survive all 3 hikes?
I was actually going to do a video on my YouTube channel about this, the gear that survived the Triple Crown.
Oh, right.
And
there you go.
it was funny that there were a couple of bits of gear that fell apart at the last minute. But there were a few things that survived. My sleeping quilt did all 3.
Nice.
That's a synthetic quilt, so it could be washed quite frequently and stay clean. And there are a few other bits and pieces, but I would say that I had to replace a lot on the AT because I bought gear and then it either didn't suit me or it broke.
Sure. And
then I had to buy new gear for the PCT. But most of the gear that I took on the PCT, I did reuse for the CDT. Right. So, there were quite a lot of things.
Are you a tenter or hammocker?
Preference is hammocking, but I only hammocked on the AT. I used a tent for the PCT and CDT.
And how well marked is the trail? Because I've had this, because I did actually follow Dixie. I mentioned Dixie earlier on when she did the CDT in 2018, and she said it was almost make up your own hike. Is that, I presume Far Out is still there, or did you feel the need to take maps as well?
Far Out was fine for me. I also used Gaia, which was really great because I believe that the CDT isn't a trail. There's only a trail marked on Far Out because Far Out need to sell a map, and. As far as I'm concerned, the CDT is a corridor, and along that corridor, 90 miles wide, as long as you go from south to north or north to south, or flip-flop if you want,
with connected steps.
If you can connect your steps via any way that you choose, then that's, to me, a through hike. There was somebody that managed to have continuous footsteps and he made the trail only 2,400 miles because he took a lot of shortcuts, and he was using Gaia maps to find his way around certain bits, and that's his hike. Hike his own hike and all that. And I found it a lot of fun later in the trail to use Gaia to kind of find my own routes that were less traveled. And I really loved it. I went up and over some mountains. I first started using it.
Which weren't even on the trail.
I mean, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, there were some areas closed for fire in Colorado, and the advice was to leave trail and then get around via hitching to get around the fire, because there was no alternate.
Sure.
And that's when I first fired up Gaia and said, well, let's go other ways. And I went and took a quite elaborate multi-day route far around the fires to get to continue my continuous footsteps. And
good for you. Because you did it last, because even through all that snow in 2022 in the Sierras, you had tons of snow, didn't you? You got through all of it, didn't you? You didn't have to skip anything, did you?
No. The only place I came close was the Cajon Pass, where there was a fire closing the ridge, but I managed to go around that. We went. The people I went through the Sierra with, we did all of that through the snow, and we this year last time on the CDT went through the snow again and completed the San Juans. There are many routes around, and I think that's great because it means a lot of people that aren't confident on snow or just don't want to do it still get to experience the CDT with continuous footsteps, because there are many routes and alternates you can take. And I really love that about the CDT, is just the freedom the AT has one route and that's it.
Oh, yeah.
And the CDT for me was just a pick your own adventure. Going back to your original question, how well marked was it? It was very more well marked for the majority of the trail. It was as well marked for most of it as the PCT, but there were some, because Colorado made an effort over the last few years to be the first state on the CDT to have a complete trail for the CDT all the way through. And in their effort to do that, they have put posts up along ridges or wherever, and they're expecting people walking from post to post to kind of beat down a trail. So there'll just be a hillside with no path, but if you look, you can go from, trail marker to trail marker, but there isn't a path, but there are, beacons or not beacons, but, there are trail markers that you can follow.
I'd struggle with that, man. I think I need to know.
I did too.
I need someone to put me in the right direction. I'll tell you all the time. And each trail has its vibe. Wherever you are, I hiked in the Southwest Coast Path in England last year. What's the vibe of this particular trail like for you? Because you've had now in just over a period of 2.5 years, effectively, you've done 3 long trails. You've seen the vibe in each of them. What's the vibe like on the CDT?
I think it's a very experienced vibe. The vast majority of people I met, it's either their second or third of the Triple Crown.
I'm sure.
There were a lot of people who were completing their Triple Crown this year, just more than I've met on any other trail. It seems like 50% of the people you speak to were finishing their Triple Crown. So very, very experienced people, knew what they were doing. And so that's what I mean. You can rely on the advice of all of these people around you. And there were some people who it was their first hike, first ever hike. I actually hiked with a guy called Snooze, who was in his early 20s. And it was his first ever hike. And he just took to it like they say, as a duck to water.
Yes.
He seemed to be a pro. When I met him in southern Colorado, just before I hit the snow, we went through the San Juans together, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he had every confidence in the world, and also he was quite sensible for his age as well, so he wasn't really taking risks. And I thought, this is a guy that has definitely got sort of more miles under his belt than he's saying, but he said, no, it's for my first long hike. It's the one I've been dreaming of, and that's the one I want to do.
Good for him. And you mentioned a duck to water. Talking about water, the river crossings, I know, especially from your films on the PCT, were quite traumatic almost, they looked to me anyway. What were the river crossings like on this trail?
Frequent river crossings.
And lively? And were they lively?
There were a couple. I would say that the Sierra section of the PCT and sort of Maine in the AT rivaled anything the CDT had. I think the experience from those two, sort of going, waist to chest deep.
Yes, bloody freezing water, nightmare.
Yeah, it didn't. I didn't find that the CDT had anything that I was sort of worried for my life, or at least I can't remember anything, thankfully. Maybe I've just blocked it out.
Yeah, that works.
But the river crossings, there's a section of New Mexico that can't be missed, and it's not actually on the main trail, it's an alternate. It's called the Gila River, Gila, and I would recommend anybody thinking of doing the CDT to certainly look at doing that. It is such an incredible section, and it's most people's favorite, if not top 2 sections of the trail. And there were several days, it takes several days to get through, sure. And you're following a canyon with a river running through it, and you'll walk for several hundred feet up one side, and then the river is now in front of you, and you have to cross it to get to the other side. And you've got these high canyon walls each side, so it's not like you can go around it. And it's river crossing to river crossing. And there was one day where we counted over 100 river crossings.
Oh no! What a nightmare! 100.
Some of them are knee deep, some of them are ankle deep, but some of them are waist deep.
If they got deep in the title, they're not good. None of them are good. So you've done it now, and then you've got your YouTube channel still working on. You've shown a lot of different adventures on your YouTube channel over the years, and you've now got quite a good audience as well. Do they start suggesting you things to do? Now you've done the Triple Crown, you can do other things now, obviously. Do they reach out and suggest things to you, or have you any idea what your next adventure actually is?
I got lots of plans for what I like to do, and I've got quite a supportive core audience, but I do know that almost everyone who watches my YouTube channel is really a person who came along because of the hikes.
Right.
And I'm, as much as I'd like to do different things with my life and travel to different places, and I've got all these aims and dreams and everything like that, hiking will have to be a big part of what continues with that channel, because that is the reason people originally tuned in. Most of the suggestions I get are other hikes. People seem to be suggesting the AZT, which is something I would love to do, the Arizona Trail.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of other hikes that people mention.
You thought the AZT, not the AZT, which most English people would say.
I think it's always been referred to by or talked about by Americans, so it's a kind of a slip, I guess. You'll have to forgive me of that one.
It's absolutely correct. I always say to people, my British friends say to me, "You use American words." I say, "But I live in America. If you went to live in France or Paris, whatever, in France, you'd have to start speaking French. I mean, that's the deal, isn't it? So you use those words. So have you got one lined up for 2025 at all, or is this going to be more of a fallow year where you earn more money?
I've got to earn more money. That's a serious thing. The Triple Crown did take a chunk out of the savings, so I'd like to replenish that. So fiscal responsibility is number one this year on my budget list. But I will be returning to the US to attend the Alder West Triple Crown ceremony.
Where you get the Triple Crown, that's right, the ceremony itself. That would be awesome for you. And you mentioned quite a few people on the CDT were doing it, so there'll be quite a few other people out there, I presume, this year.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. There'll be quite a lot of people who attend that, so it'd be like a reunion of sorts.
I bet. Well, look, many congratulations.
Thank you.
We followed all your 3 hikes now, so we've done the full set. If you do another one that's of interest to everybody, just let me know and we'll get you back on. But all I can say is many congratulations and thanks for taking the time to come and share the whole journey. We can now, I might actually release all 3 episodes at one time as a compendium of our Marriott's hikes. So thanks for coming on and sharing it with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure all 3 times.
All 3 times, buddy. Take it easy, okay?
Thank you.
Cheers then. Bye. He's such a self-effacing bloke, isn't he? Very understated, full of confidence in his hiking and determined to get things done. He's managed his life of hiking at a time when most would be career building and in many cases deferring their ambitions because of work and family. Al has designed his life to be able to do those big adventures, and after 3 straight summers, he's rewarded with the Triple Crown. I know for many of you that designation doesn't matter, but I'm always impressed by the dedication these men and women show to achieve this 8,000-mile goal. And what about the day in the Gila River section when he had over 100 river crossings? That would have been a nightmare for me. I have enough trouble standing up on a dry trail. God knows how I'd handle 100 rivers to cross. And you should check out Al's YouTube channel, Adventure Together. It's really very good, and I'll have a link in the show notes for you. I'm also linking you to day 141, when Al gets to the end of both his CDT and his Triple Crown. Gratifyingly, we've got a few more people to thank again this week. Let's start with our monthly donors. They are Ninka de Huss, Gal Posey, Galloway Johnson, Todd Withrow and Suzanne Johnson. Also, Rob Diamond, who was part of my crew that went up to Hot Springs late last year, has made another donation just before he sets out on the trail for his own through-hike attempt. And, though I've only just seen it, our friend Mary Marks, who was in our Mighty Blue class of 2023, gave another donation as well. Thanks to all of you. This podcasting lark isn't getting any cheaper, so I'm grateful that some of you recognise that and want to keep these episodes coming. Cheers. Now, let's hear another chapter from Emily Leonard's Happy Hiking, where smiles are the currency on this day. I'll see you next week. Chapter 21. Miles of Smiles. It started as a small blister on my second toe. The blister broke, and then as the dead skin peeled away, a donut-shaped callus formed. The outer rim was hard, and the inner circle stayed raw. Some days it hurt so bad I wanted to quit. I tried everything short of amputation. Wraps, corn pads, tape, moleskin. Nothing helped except going barefoot. I was glad for the short day and the promise of hotel amenities. The day was uneventful, but was full of interesting sights. I saw lots of black and orange centipedes, 2 flowers I had not yet seen on the trail, and loads of caterpillars. Flowers always brightened my day. The pink 5-petaled bloom had a bright yellow fuzzy centre. It was all alone, just like I was in the forest. The other flower was a cluster of red berries on a low-lying shrub. I didn't recognise this plant. For the past several days, the woods had been alive with caterpillars. There were so many they made the tree trunks look like they were wearing fuzzy coats. A few nights before, I was hanging my food bag and tied the line off on a little sapling with a dozen or so healthy, fully-leaved branches. This tree was also blanketed in those little creatures. The next morning, when I retrieved my bag, the cute little tree was void of any green vegetation. One night, I spoke with the trail maintainer, discussing how numerous the caterpillars were. He made the comment, "Yeah, you can even hear their poop dropping from the trees." I didn't register that fact until the next morning when a petite, green, pea-sized drop landed on my arm. My first thought was, just more of that mud that keeps landing on me and my pack. Over the last several days, I had noticed lots of these spots on my back and on the back of my clothes and occasionally on my arms. Then it dawned on me what the trail maintainer had said. Gross! It was caterpillar poop. Yucky, yucky, yucky. I was glad to be extracted that day. Bruce was taking me to LL Bean. We found a store close by and I was in desperate need of a new pair of boots. I started out with a pair of LL Bean Cresta hikers, but they were a size too small for hiking, hence the blisters. At home, on short walks and hikes or doing chores, they were great, but not so great when I spent all day in them. I traded them out for trail shoes that were comfy but not sturdy enough, and my poor feet felt every pebble I stepped on. I went through 2 pair of those. At LL Bean, I purchased a pair of the Crestas one size larger than I normally take. I had to pay full price since I was no longer an active employee, but they were worth every penny. I had my boots and was ready to go when Bruce received an urgent work call he had to take. I didn't mind. It gave me a chance to browse the store for anything else I couldn't hike without. I managed to find a few items I needed to help me hike better. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The next day I sported a new hiking skirt and tank top. Oh yes, and the boots, because it's not how you hike, it's how you look when you hike. The next several days flew by. I was enjoying solo hiking. My backcountry skills were growing. Nearly 1,400 hiking miles had me whipped into shape. I no longer feared being alone. Each day brought new sights, smells and acquaintances. One day I met only women on the trail. It was girls' day out. Another day, I finished state number 7 as I said goodbye to Pennsylvania and all her rocks. Well, almost all the rocks. They spilled over into New Jersey for several miles, but who's counting? I saw Kilroy again. We hiked together briefly, but then he sailed on by. One early morning when Bruce was taking me back to the trail, we had several animal sightings which included deer, birds, baby bunnies, red and grey squirrels and a groundhog. The most exciting spectacle was a black bear picking through a bear-safe trash receptacle. So much for don't feed the bears. Step by step, mile by mile, hiking still made me smile. I was consistently logging 14-mile days. That seemed to be the magic number that kept my feet happy. I should have been satisfied with those figures, but after doing high miles in the past, cutting back to such a low number felt like a setback for me. I needed to remind myself it was more important to listen to my body. Too many hikers have gotten caught up in doing big miles too soon, too often, and too long. And then they burn out. Not me, though. That's why I was in a hotel again. No burnout here, just miles of smiles. June the 21st came and I decided to take a 0 day. Not so much because I needed a rest. The lower miles and rest in hotels had me in peak condition, but because it was Father's Day. I thought it would be nice to spend it with the daddy of my children. It gave me a chance to attempt to treat him for the day, since he was spending all his free time for the last 3 months helping me. Secretly, I didn't want to be on the trail during that 24 hours. June the 21st was the first day of summer, and on the trail there's an unwritten tradition I did not want to be a part of. It's solely by choice, and most people choose to abstain from the activity, but my wild side would have done it. So I stayed off the trail and saved everyone who may have encountered me from a hideous sighting of me in my birthday suit. Because you just can't undo seeing such things. Naked hiking day will have to wait for another time. The 0 day was a treat. Besides spending Father's Day with Bruce, I reflected on what a day in the life of a hiker was like. I was getting questions from friends and family on what I actually did out there, so I wrote this in my blog. Blog post for June the 21st, 2015. Morning ritual. Decide it's time to start the day. Let the air out of my partly deflated mattress pad and start packing my bedding. First, my sleeping bag gets stuffed back into its compression sack and placed in the bottom of a dry bag, followed by the mattress pad, then topped off with my interior ground cloth. After which I change into my usually wet and smelly hiking clothes and pack my dry sleeping attire into their own dry sack. If it's not raining, I place everything outside my tent, then take down my home away from home as it also goes into its own dry sack. If it's raining, while I'm still inside my tent, I pack everything in my pack first to keep it dry. Then I exit the tent and stuff my wet tent into my pack last. I have a quick breakfast, which is normally cereal enhanced with trail mix with dry milk. It's actually very yummy and nutritious. A great way to start a hike. If all goes well, I'm on the trail by 6 a.m. or 6:15 a.m. Sometimes, if I'm lazy, boots do not hit the trail until 7 a.m. Second breakfast, a granola bar comes out about 1.5 to 2 hours after I start hiking, or sooner depending on how my feet feel. I usually like to hike a certain duration of time before resting. My normal pace on moderate terrain is 2 miles per hour without breaks, so if I hike at least an hour, I know I have covered about 2 miles or so. This helps me judge my progress and gauge my ETA based on the day's mileage goal. Lunch hopefully happens around noon or 1 p.m. and, with any luck, takes place at a shelter with a picnic table or a rock outcropping with a view. I'm not always fortunate enough for this to happen, depending on weather, terrain, shelter spacing and how I feel. Burgers and fries would be my preference, but I settle for pretzels and peanut butter, or crackers and peanut butter. The afternoon is a rhythmical dance between hiking and stopping for breaks. They come more frequently in the afternoon. My best hiking time is in the morning. By afternoon, I start to slow down and wear out. I like to arrive at my destination by 3 to 4 p.m. On Sundays, I have arrived as early as 1:30 p.m. The latest ending time was 8 p.m. That was a long, rough and tiring day. Arriving at my home away from home is the beginning of the evening chores. Rest has not come yet. I lay claims to a spot in a shelter or a level place to pitch my tent. I must set up my tent and get everything pitched just right. I prefer tenting over shelter, so I have a barrier between me and all the creepy crawly things that are out there just waiting to freak me out. When all the chores are done, I can think about eating. Supper choices have always been a challenge for me. At home, I cook wonderful gourmet meals. Out on the trail, I hate to fire up the jet boil and prepare my trail dinners, not to mention clean-up. Many days I would just have snacks for dinner. When I head back to the woods tomorrow, I will not be packing out a stove. I will try just PB&Js for lunches and suppers. It will be much lighter and no clean-up. Hike at midnight is about 7:30 p.m. With any luck, that's when I can close my eyes. It doesn't always happen as planned, but I can always hope. In between all the hiking, eating, breaks and chores, there are those moments when I come across a fantastic view when the trees clear and the sun shines on the valley below. Or I stumble onto a black rat snake slithering across the trail, or enter a pond area in the morning fog, being serenaded by a chorus of frogs. Just some of the reasons I keep putting on my boots and enduring the daily pain I experience in my feet. I never know what's waiting for me around the next corner or over the next climb. There you have it, a day in the life of a hiker. It is a simple life. It's not an easy one, but definitely a simple one. The simplicity of the trail brought great joy, a deeper appreciation of my life off the trail, and personal growth beyond measure. I have a degree from the University of Maine. I read all I can about personal development, and I have a strong spiritual faith, but all that pales compared to what I learned on the Appalachian Trail, and I still had over 800 miles to go. The evening of June the 21st to the morning of June the 22nd marked my 8th night in a row sleeping in a hotel. During that stretch of 8 days, on the girls' only day out, I met Squirrel and Spock, who were attempting to beat the mother-daughter AT through-hike record of 126 days. Their goal was to do it in 99 days. The only record I seemed to be working toward was the most nights spent with a roof over my head that didn't involve a shelter or fabric. I never did see Squirrel and Spock again. I was well rested and ready for big miles on June the 22nd. I wouldn't be in a plush hotel at day's end, but I would be in a town. Bruce would slap at me again and retrieve me from the trail at County Road 517 in Glenwood, New Jersey. From there, we would drive to Unionville, New York, and camp in the little town park. It was a beautiful hike, with clear skies, easy terrain, and open fields at times. The added bonus came soon into the hike when I caught up with Kilroy. He was fun to hike with. His demeanour was calm and quiet, with an adorable sense of humour. He carried a very heavy pack and was more than happy to let Bruce slack pack him. At the end of my 18-mile day, Kilroy joined us in the town park. Unionville was quaint and quiet, but did not have too much to offer hikers. There was a small diner, but the menu was not gluten-free friendly. I managed with my trail food while Kilroy and Bruce dined on fresher goods. We were very grateful for the hospitality of using the town park and homemade treats delivered by the local Girl Scouts. The peacefulness of this little town ended with the setting of the sun. The night in the park was not as restful as I preferred. Kid townies came in after 10 p.m, partying and carrying on. In between laughter and music, a midnight game of backyard hoops bounced until the wee hours of the morning. 5 o'clock came way too early. Thankfully, the start of the trail was inviting. At first, a wonderful boardwalk carried us over a marsh, much like the one in Bangor's city forest back home. We travelled through the reeds and over a brook for about a mile before leading us back into the woods. At this point, Kilroy and I said goodbye to Bruce. We would see him again 7 miles out. First, we had to climb the Stairway to Heaven, a very steep and rocky ascent. It was a great leg and butt workout, just another section prepping us for the White Mountains and Katahdin. It was challenging, yet enjoyable. The trail continued to be ambitious. The Book of Lies showed an unimposing profile, but the ups were abrupt and the downs were just as drastic. We journeyed along an exposed ridge that roller coasted above and below treeline. When it peekabooed out of the forest, it revealed stunning 360-degree sights. Unfortunately, we could not take in the vistas as long as we wished. A violent storm rumbled in the distance and grew closer with each step. The ride on the coaster went on, and with each summit we could see the clouds growing in size and darkening as they headed our way. With each dip below the trees we thought we would reach safety, but just as quickly as we descended, we went right back up and were exposed again. I tried talking Kilroy into staying in one of the nooks, but he was sure we'd be fine. I frantically moved forward. I was not going to huddle alone in the approaching storm. Besides, Kilroy was taller than me by 18 inches, and he was carrying a metal-framed pack. The odds were stacked in my favour. All of a sudden, the heavens opened and drenched us as lightning and thunder flashed and roared not too far away. Gone was our beautiful blue sky. Finally, we dropped well below treeline. There we found a father and his daughter safely waiting out the burst. This time, Kilroy agreed that it was a good idea to wait for Mother Nature to calm her temper. So there we all stood, 4 drowned rats spread out under the trees, hoping the one we chose was not the tallest. 20 minutes passed, and the storm was gone quicker than it had arrived. With a group vote, we decided it was safe and we hiked on. It was a good thing we stopped when we did. In less than a quarter mile, we came to a section that looked as though artillery shells had hit the area. Debris covered the trail, and in several places large tree limbs had fallen, making passage impossible. We had to bushwhack through and around them. We had racked up another 18 miles, crossed another state line, and survived the worst thunderstorm I experienced on the hike. It seemed each storm became the worst yet. All in all, it was a successful day. To top it all off, I didn't have to sleep outside. The 3 of us shared a motel room at Anton's on the lake. It wasn't much, but it was dry, offered laundry, and it was cheap. That night, I lay my head on the pillow, and the miles of smiles filled my dreams.